Well, I want to welcome you to our kitchen, right? And my name is Barb Van Cooper, and I'm the Community Engagement Manager here at the theater. And we're so delighted to have you join us for this special behind-the-scenes panel discussion, Serving the Story. And indeed, you are going to experience, so this is what I did today when I was walking the dog. So these are daddy jokes, okay? I'm the warm-up act. And indeed, you will experience a delicious offering of conversation. Right? Very good. And thoughtfully prepared just for you. So tonight you'll be hearing from the director of Carter Hall, and please underestimate me, this is Lily Ann Brown, and the founder of Story District, Amy Sedman. And also, the conversation will be led by our Associate Artistic Director, Hallie Golden. And you can review their panelist bios in the program that I just handed out. So come with us as we explore how Carter's story came to life, blending the worlds of three things: food, performance, and personal narrative. And before I give too much away, I'm handing it to you. Thank you,
I know you all have bios, but I do want to just start by giving just a little bit of background, because we are going to be talking about storytelling and what it means to tell your personal story and what it means to storyteller. Lillian Brown, how many of you were here when we did Fela? So Lillian Brown directed Fela for us. Still my all-time favorite show at Home Theater. She is also going to be at Roundhouse with Ma Rainey's Black Bottom.
Woohoo!
Yes. So don't miss that. You directed at Arena Stage, you directed at Baltimore Center Stage, you directed at Woody Hammond, you directed nationally all over. And we are so happy and always. And I know Lil from Chicago because I spent most of my career in Chicago and I saw Lil grow up. So I feel privileged to have seen you master what you do. So, and I'm really excited to talk to you specifically about the difference in storytelling when you're working with someone's personal story, and you're working with one person and not a full cast. And over here, I have Amy Sedman, right, who I just met, but is, as I'm sure Lil knows, in Chicago we have a huge live list. I don't know what you call it, scene, thank you, scene. And Amy is head of a live storytelling scene here in the DC area. And so just to say, you are their artistic and executive director and the visionary force behind DC Story District. You are an expert in the raw, unadulterated art of live storytelling. You know how to mine regular human experiences for gold and train everyday people to command pen and mic. And so before we start, I would just like to know by a show of hands, how many of you have experienced a failure in your life? Just by show of hands. Great. How many of you can look back on that now and laugh, which some of you already did, or have learned from it and grown from it? How many of you have told that story to other people? Yeah. So I would love to ask, my first question is for you, Amy, and it is, so everybody has stories, right? But what in your mind is the difference between having a story and being the storyteller?
Ooh,
Good.
interesting question. I think, so everyone has many stories, and there are certain stories that are, captivating for a setting. The people that, there's a different sort of social contract. In a social setting, you're trying to get to know each other, you're trying to connect in a very specific way, to build a relationship. For a storyteller to get on stage, you need to take that up a notch. You need to, there's more, it's a different social contract. Your audience, it is on you to put a little more thought into it, how you shape it, so it has an arc, so it has meaning, so it has depth that connects with your audience. So I would say, and to be quite honest, the folks who come through the Story District program, whether it's to get on stage in one of our shows or to take a class, often are like, oh, this is harder than I thought. Because in some ways and a lot of times the hard part isn't the writing, it's the self-discovery. It's the answering the hard questions. But that's also the most rewarding part. So that's what I would say.
Just to say out loud, and I know that we all probably know this, but the basic element of how a story is constructed. You have everyday life, a character who goes through everyday life, and then there's a conflict, or there's an inciting incident, and then there's a resolution, not to mean that everything comes out perfectly, but that character or person has changed because of the event. Is that?
Almost.
I know that's basic.
I'm gonna throw a couple things in.
So,
Before you get to the change, you have to have a challenge. There's no story without a challenge, so that might, and maybe you can speak to this too. That could come in different ways. It could be an internal challenge. It could be the challenge between two great options, just but there is the inciting incident sets things in motion. It makes today different than any other day.
Yep.
But then you have to, if you looked at the actual diagram, it goes up. It has to go up, there has to be tension, or it's just not interesting, there's no story. And then at some point, there's a change, like you said, and then.
Question.
Question.
Because she said, inciting incident, conflict, is challenge different?
Oh, conflict challenge, I guess I used to forget. Okay. Conflict obstacle, but did you say that?
I did.
Okay, so I consider the inciting incident is the beginning.
Got
It's what sets it in motion, and thereafter, so what we talk about when we coach storytelling for individuals is the inside that inciting incident, what comes out of that is a desire and a motivation. So what do you want? Why do you want it? And what gets in the way? That's usually how we simplify it. So along the way, something is getting in the way of what you want, why you want it, and that's just what I consider the tension. And then along the way, we get a sense of what is at stake, why does this matter, and that as much as possible, the best stories, the stakes get raised along the way.
Great. So we come to you with this personal story of Carla Hall. Carla Hall, along with writers Gloria Kay and Leslie Thomas, wrote this. It's about Carla Hall. We hand you this story, this personal story. What is your first kind of thought in how to bring this personal narrative to the stage?
I think because my main job is world building, so I start sort of big and go this way. So I start generally with like a big vision, and then when I'm working dramaturgically, that's when I like drill down and start trying to get those details. But initially, it's like read the script and what pictures do I see?
Which is really interesting because I think I've read from you that something that you try and teach the storyteller is to visualize what the story is, right? So there's a picture, whether you're just talking to the audience and telling the story, and then there's an actual picture when you're directing the story.
Right.
Do you find that for a storyteller that it's challenging to picture it?
No, I think it is something that they don't do naturally all the time. Some do. But it takes some poking and pulling at threads and asking questions to get them to see their story and to paint that picture for us. But that is where the magic happens.
That's great. Just to give you all some background, Jason Lowick, artistic director, read an article in New York Times about Carla Hall where she said the one thing she's wanted to do is a one-woman show. Jason immediately called her, about an hour, called her and said, "You can do it here." As a good artistic director.
So smart.
Just before that happened, Carla, who has a working relationship with the two other writers, Lori and Leslie, Leslie actually shoots food shows. And Carla does food shows, and so they met that way. And Leslie and Carla was like, I really want to do a one. Leslie and Lori were like, great, we will write it. And so that's kind of how that came to be. So they started working with her and meeting with her. I'm just kind of giving you a little background on how her story was developed, because then something interesting happened for her story. So I went out to Los Angeles where they were, and I met with them and with Carla and tried to draw out more stories from her. It was basically like a conversation like we're having now, just like, what are some things in your life? Anything, doesn't have to be groundbreaking moments, doesn't have to be, but the more you have conversations with people, the more things come out. And we did 2 workshops. The first workshop was through our Vanguard Arts Fund, in which we did a week workshop in which Jason and I were both there, and we pulled more stories out and we kind of fine-tuned and kind of looked at the arc of the story, kind of those bullet points that we just talked about, like the inciting incident, the conflict, the resolution, and then we brought Lil in for a workshop and did some more work. And then what I found really interesting is when we were in rehearsal, more stories started coming out. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? And the conversations that you had with Carla to kind of get those stories out?
Yeah, it's just interrogation.
Yeah.
It's just interrogation, right? Because if you're going to show people a story, there has to be a connection, right? You know, that's the whole point of this. That's the whole point of these rooms, where we come and convene, and I don't know if y'all know this, but like audiences' heartbeats sink. Did you know that?
Nope.
Yeah, that happens in the theater. Sometimes breathing sinks. It is a true communal experience at its very best. And that's why it is so important to gather and tell stories, which we have been doing since there has been language, human language. So I think that when we start talking about, okay, I'm going to get on stage and tell a story, we want to connect. And that's the whole point. And so that's sort of, I consider that part of my job as a director, is trying to like hone those connective pieces of the story, like what part connects. And so there were times that she would be saying, whatever, you know, here's the story, blah, 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 this happened. And most of the time, that drill down, that interrogation, those next stories would happen because I simply would go, well, that might happen.
Okay, well,
Or I
this is
would
what
say,
you
like,
did.
well,
You
why did you do that?
But you were also like, wait a minute, what was that? I mean, casually saying something huge, and you're like,
Yeah.
you can't just pass over that. You'll see some of that in here. I mean, there were things that were added to this
Yeah.
during the rehearsal process because of
Big
the
ones,
yeah,
too.
some really
You
big
know,
ones.
she would be telling the story and then, yeah, casually say like, oh, and after that, this other thing happened. I was like, man,
Yeah.
how is that not part of
Yes.
what we wrote down? Like part of the script, like when you initially told Leslie and Lori and Hannah
Yeah.
that story,
Why do you
And it's really just, it's just a matter of methodical interrogation, right? Just
Yeah.
like literally just, and also curiosity,
Yes.
right? Just, as she's telling stories, just continually being like, what else happened? Oh my God. But also
Yeah.
just getting close in the rehearsal room. Because like you said, sometimes it was just casual conversation.
Right.
And I would say, wait a minute,
Yeah.
that's another story. I think we need to add it, or I think we need to also mix that in somehow.
Or even, can you bring that emotionally into,
Right, yes.
without even
Yeah.
adding, but like,
Yeah,
come from that place when you're in that moment.
right,
Yeah.
yeah, sometimes it was like, we would talk about an incident that's in a show, or what was going on with one of these stories, and she would tell more stories, or tell some backstory. And we would decide, okay, we don't wanna like add all of that to the script, but emotionally, if you can add that, right? Like if you could just think about that thing that happened before, that we're not gonna know about, but you know about it. And that emotionally informs the story that you do tell.
So, Amy, let me ask you a question. So let's say I go to Elle over there, and Elle wants to tell their story. How do you train someone who, one, has never told their story before, let alone have that kind of pressure, exhilaration, adrenaline from being live and telling that story to other people?
So I'll take that as two different questions.
Yeah.
The development is different than, is a sort of different phase from performance, but, so, it's very similar to what you said. I had the opportunity to work with Carla in 2018, 2019 as her first storytelling coach, because she was about to go on a tour to do, Carla Hustle's Southern Kitchen.
Oh, nice.
And so basically, I actually use metaphors of cooking, for the process, talk about the process, I'll be like, all right, don't start cooking yet. Just let's get all your ingredients out on the table, let's see what we have to work with. Then we just have to figure out what kind of meal we want to make. So it really kind of resembles what you're saying. Just like, let's get it all out and then see what we have to work with. So that's what we did, which was really great. And that's what I would do with anybody. A lot of times, so we have structured classes, but we also, sometimes our shows are made up of people from the public, so that anybody really can pitch a story.
So you all
can pitch a story.
You can pitch a story.
And yeah, so it'll be usually on a theme. And then we'll take that brain of an idea, and sometimes I can tell, oh, this will be a great story, let's go. A lot of times I can't. So we'll do a follow-up call. And I have to ask a lot of questions, a lot of things exactly come out. They're like, you started over here, but we want this story. And for some reason, people don't always see what we see.
Yeah.
They've lived it, they're too close to it, I don't know, and it's right there, so it really helps to have a coach, or someone who's listens in a different kind of way and helps you uncover those things. So did I answer? Okay.
Yeah. And what about the performance aspect of it, for someone who's never performed?
So for us in particular, we are very much, we focus about 89% on the content. We want you to have great content that you love, that you own. That it's really, by saying you own it, you really know your story, you can see your story. And that the rest kind of takes care of itself, because we don't want people active. What we do is so personal, we want it to be somewhat conversational, and we want you to be you. I don't want anybody to get up there and be anybody but themselves. So we actually don't want them to perform. We just want them to get confidence. So practicing, by the way, some people practice 20, practicing makes a big difference.
And do they have a mic? Like, does that change? Do they practice with a mic? Because that, for someone who's never used a mic, even
Yeah.
people who have, that can be a little daunting. Okay. Yeah.
We don't always have the opportunity to provide that in advance.
How many of you all know The Moth, for the mob. Listen to us.
I know, the mob is.
I mean, that's similar, I think the moth, I think, trains a little bit in the acting area, the way, the delivery of it. Do you
I don't
know?
think so. Actually, the Mob actually has, radio shows,
Yeah.
podcasts, and they have performances around the world.
Yeah.
Most of those are open mic. So anybody comes in and they put their name in a hat and they're pulled out, and then it's a slam. And then from those, they do their best out of the slam, but you don't know who's.
You don't know who's gonna be
But
on.
one of the things, then they take that and they do their best and they best. And then occasionally they'll put together, curate something that they, but it's different. They actually do, I think we are much more in the vein of developing new talent and investing. We invest months in each storyteller that gets on our stage.
Wow.
Yeah,
And what is like an evening of storytellers? How many storytellers do you have?
6 to 8. We each tell about 7 to 10 minutes stories on a common theme. There's a host that says, I'm often the host, come to the stage, so-and-so. So it resembles a comedy night more than anything else. But it's very different range of emotions, of an emotional journey depending on the stories. Within one story, like, and then you're wiping your tears. So
Yeah.
it's all of it, yeah.
Interesting. How many of you would be interested in telling your story or a part of your story or? You have another? I'm totally not gonna ask you to do it. I'm just curious, like if there's a burning desire, like I have this amazing story.
You should all raise your hands because it's so much fun. It is. It's hard, but it's also really rewarding.
And you, yeah.
I always kind of wanted to do
Have
it.
you really?
The Moth?
Yeah.
Oh my God, yes, I listened to it.
I know, I love it.
I love it.
Yeah, and same thing with like This American Life, like all those kinds of stories that are so, and they're everyday people. That to me is what is really, we're so inundated with celebrity culture right now. And it's just so, to be able to hear someone of just a regular citizen's story means everything. There's so much vitality and connection in that. And I think that's, even though we know Pearl is a celebrity chef, but there's so much personal journey that we witness from her that makes her feel like an everyday citizen, that her struggles are universal. And I think that's something that lends itself to storytelling too, is you hear someone's story who you would think you have nothing in common with this person. And they tell, not even necessarily their story, but a story from them. And there's an immediate connection. Do you find that your storytellers become friends or how?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
It's one of the
Yeah, I bet.
yeah.
So take her class.
Can I pitch? Just we have a podcast, it's free, so for those of you who also who listen to the month, add Story District Presents to your playlist.
So Lil, I do want to ask, because you do plays and musicals that generally have large casts. And I'd love to hear what your experience has been dealing with solo performance. Do you enter it differently at all?
Yeah, I actually find it challenging.
Yeah.
And probably somewhat because I'm not used to it.
Yeah.
So anything new is a new challenge. I've done, funny enough, Tanya Richard, she's developing, she wrote a book. Her story is weirdly similar in so many ways to Carla. But I was working on, I helped her develop her thing in Chicago, but I'm not directing it because the timing didn't work out.
Yeah.
But that was sort of my first taste, and that was really just last year. So it's really funny that like back to back, it was like, hey, one more show, and I was like, okay, I kind of know a little bit about that, and then came here and did this workshop.
Yeah.
It's so, like, directing already is very, like, you have to focus in a very intense way. And so when there's no spread
Yeah.
of the focus,
Mhm.
that is, gosh, I don't know if I have words for why that is particularly kind of exhausting, actually.
There's no scene partner.
There's no scene partner, there's just really, it's funny, it's like how Carla talks about biscuits. There's nowhere to hide,
Yeah.
there's nowhere to go,
Yeah.
it's this. And it's this one person and their narrative, and so you've got to like keep the focus and it was exhausting for her too,
Yeah.
right? Because again, there's nobody that's sort of like, I'm gonna drink some water, you get it for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, it's you the whole time, and so it just felt like,
It's running.
that rehearsal room is like me and Carla, like, oh, we're tired, okay, let's keep telling this doggone story. Yeah, I think that's the challenge.
How did you grapple with the distinction between Carla the person on stage and Carla the performer on stage?
I don't think there's a difference. But that's sort of also peculiarly me, is I'm a very holistic sort of creator. And I think a lot of questions that people ask me where they're like, what about this and this, or what about that and that? I hear myself all the time go, I don't have a distinction. I think the human experience is, I don't know, like, first of all, who Carla is she is a storyteller.
Yeah.
As a human.
Mhm.
That's just within her, so it feels a little like this feels a little like,
Grapes, that's all I know.
no, this feels a little like, you know what they say, the sculpture is inside the block of marble and the sculptor just chips away and it was already in there, like that. Like, it was already there, and I'm just like, okay, let's remove the excess,
Yeah.
and let's like shape it, and, you know, I'll build you a kitchen so you can run around in it.
Let's talk about this.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this kitchen behind us. How did you, okay, so I'm gonna rewind us to the beginning of this conversation when we were talking about, you know, first we looked at the whole, right? Why, I mean, I know when you all see it, it's gonna feel obvious, but it didn't have to be this set. I'm just gonna say that.
Right.
It didn't
Right,
have
it
to be
could have
this
been,
set.
like anything.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'd love to hear from you, and your set designer, Lauren. What was that conversation like about, let's do this?
Well, funny enough, Lauren and I have built a kitchen before, so that was one of the reasons why she was my first thought as a scenic designer. I was like, okay, we did this play a couple of years ago called Hot Wing King. We built a whole like house, but like the main thing was the kitchen, because a lot of scenes take place, there was cooking, the things had to work. And because we've done that before, I was like, oh, okay, let me talk to Lauren about this kitchen, that this functions differently, because it's less about like working burners and sinks and things like that, and more about providing a versatile backdrop for her story to go far afield and to be able to come back and be like, oh, it's a TV set, right? Because Carla works in TV, and the main device of the way the script is written, it's written with a device, with like a framing device, and the framing device is a fictional cooking show that we got. We named it The Perfect Bite. And if anybody sort of gets that joke, then it's going down. And Yeah, and so we kind of, we started with the framing device and said, okay, what does that look like and how can we transform it? So what's the best transformational space? And then we spent, as you know,
Yeah.
months trying to
Yeah.
figure out how to transform the
Yeah.
space.
Yeah, literally storyboarding.
Yeah.
The use of the space. And I think that's something that's interesting in terms of a one-woman show and what we've been talking about in terms of telling the story. Like, in a way, she is cradled by this
Yeah.
in a really lovely way. Whereas a storyteller just gets up, and it's just, it's almost like getting up naked. You know, it's like you're just up there with the mic and you're just gonna tell a story. And hope you make a connection. Amy, when you're working with people and telling their story, what role does the audience play in kind of the end process?
That's a great question. So we talk about it a lot. We love our audiences and they come ready to listen, be moved, connect, and support the storyteller on stage. And I think in part of the design, since we get people from the general public, and a lot of them have never been on stage at all, they bring their people, right? So half the audience, roughly, are people that know the people on stage. And so it's just overflowing with this enthusiasm and affection. And then the rest are like, what did I get myself into? What storytelling is. But we really do a lot to keep pump up the audience and make them part of the show. It's very much a fourth wall. I have to shout out our musical director back there, Scott Hollingsworth, also known as DJ Sugar Pants.
That's a U.S. story.
I mean, he brings the room to life because we always have music that opens the show. That everybody has an entrance. They enter on a song, they leave on a song, it has something to do with the story they just told. He spends weeks just figuring out what the right song is and what the right point in the song is, but that's all part of bringing the audience into it. And as a host, it's very much, crowd work. That's part of why we have a host. Sometimes we'll have, we do have certain more theatrical feeling where there is no host in between. When we have bigger venues like the Lincoln Theater where we use the screen and then there's more digital that makes it, but most of the time it's bringing the audience into it, getting them to shout out, what's yours? Sometimes we actually have people swap. We say, all right, what's this story, did that make you think of something? And then we'll take the lights up and have them swap a story for 3 minutes, and then maybe get someone to give a 1 minute version of something they heard. So,
Well, that's interesting, because I'd love for you to talk a little bit about how the audience plays a part in part of the story.
Well, more than most.
Yeah.
But we always say in the theater that the final cast member is the audience, and the final piece always to creating the show is the audience. It's not complete without the audience. Our theater is made to be experienced by people live. Carla, because I honestly think that her, I think she's got a few superpowers. But one of the big ones is just her facility with people and her facility with just groups of people. She just does great crowd work. She
loves people.
She just loves people. And so the first thing she wants to do is talk to people. So if you've got her up here doing a cooking demo, she's gonna wanna not just do the demo and show the thing and kind of stay with this fourth wall. Carla's a very break the fourth wall person. So it's wonderful to create a theatrical thing with her because we're immediately including the audience. And so the show is built for that because she's so good at it. So it's so cool to be able to create a thing right? It doesn't just like live on the page, because when plays are written, it's like, okay, this is the thing, it exists on this paper, and it could go anywhere, and anybody could interpret it their way. But with Carla's show, this show is built to specifically have her talking and interacting with people.
Yeah, and it was interesting because that's very hard to do in rehearsal because you don't have that audience. So it was really, getting, the audience is her scene partner in so many ways. And that first time she was able to get in front of that audience,
Man, right?
yeah,
Because it gets like, you know, and again, all plays experience this where like sort of late in the game and rehearsals, you start feeling absolutely insane because you've done it and there's no audience. And so you start feeling like, is this working? I don't even know anymore. We've done it, we've changed it, I think I like it, but you're just in a vacuum and it starts getting weird, like saying the same word over and over. It starts to sound strange. It's like that. So this with the audience participation, and it's like the same, it's just us in the room, like, yes, same answer.
yeah.
Sorry, I don't, you know, and we got like interns and people in the room who were like trying to be creative for her so that she can have audience interaction, but it's just us chickens.
Yeah.
So that got a little like, Hallie had to be our guinea pig so many, like all the time.
It wasn't very,
No, you weren't, you were great, thank God.
it really is about me. It's like,
Honestly, it's, I mean, I swear, we should have like a custodian walk by, we'd be like, please come in here. Say something.
I don't know how we're doing on time.
You're okay, it is 5:39.
Oh, okay, great. I'd love to take questions from you all that you may have. Yeah.
I have a question. You talked about the story needing the 10